Think George Clooney is the kind of guy who quietly slips out the back door? Not a chance. For more than 3 decades in the spotlight, he has built a reputation for doing exactly the opposite. Loud when it matters, unapologetically public, and never afraid to attach his name to causes or people while others carefully calculate the risks. From Hollywood to philanthropy to politics, his career is packed with moments where he chose the difficult path and said the thing most people would rather avoid because it actually came with consequences.
I do love the fact that it is the Clooneys that are now delivering Harry and Meghan a taste of their own medicine. They're being ghosted. See how it feels? Not very nice, is it? But incredibly well deserved.
When staying quiet would have been the safer and easier move, George Clooney did the exact opposite. In 2019, he compared the media treatment of Meghan to the coverage that came before Diana's death. He called it unfair and clear, direct language right in front of the cameras. There was no hedging and no softening. He used the name that means the most to Harry and tied it to what he believed was happening to Meghan. That was not casual celebrity support. It was a public risk. Yet 6 years later, he appears completely absent from the picture.
Breaking today, shocking new details have emerged about why George and Amal Clooney ditched Prince Harry and Meghan.
No public feud. No interview explaining the distance. No dramatic showdown anyone can point to as the moment everything changed. A friendship that once looked like one of the biggest celebrity alliances of the post-royal era appears to have quietly faded away. And according to recent reports, Harry never saw it coming, which may be what makes the story sting the most. Tonight, we're breaking down the entire Clooney saga, how the friendship began, what it meant at its height, and why Meghan's 2019 public defense carried more weight than most people realized.
Because you can just imagine, Tash, they are really the ones that tend to ghost people. So the fact that they are now being ghosted is really interesting to me.
What did the Clooney's appearance at the King's Trust Awards in 2023 really signal about where their loyalties and institutional ties were heading? And what does the cooling of this relationship reveal about the state of the Sussex celebrity circle in 2025, 6 years after the royal exit that was supposed to unlock every Hollywood door and prove California would be the better chapter? More importantly, what does it mean when one of the Sussex's most vocal celebrity defenders appears to have quietly stepped away? To understand that, we have to go back to the wedding, where the Clooney connection first entered the spotlight.
Really impacted Prince Harry. He thought he was going to be boys with Clooney for life, and then the couple ditched him for the real royals.
May 2018. St. George's Chapel. Harry and Meghan's wedding was one of those rare events where the guest list became a headline of its own. Among the biggest names in the room were George Clooney and Amal Clooney. But their presence carried weight far beyond celebrity status. The Clooneys were already operating at the highest levels of global influence. George through decades of film, philanthropy, and political involvement. Amal through her work as a leading international human rights lawyer handling cases tied to war crimes, genocide, and press freedom. They were not people chasing fame. They were people already moving in circles where royalty was simply one institution among many. Their attendance sent a message that the Sussexes had entered the highest tier of the global elite. Then came reports that Harry and Meghan were invited to George Clooney's Lake Como villa, a place known for privacy rather than publicity. An invitation there suggested a connection that went far beyond sharing the same guest list.
Friendship which had actually got remarkably close, even though they had, quite wisely, I would say, from the Clooney's side of things, never been pictured publicly with Harry and Meghan. Yes, there they were turning up at the wedding. Quite rightly, they never got that public picture.
Then came 2019, when Meghan was facing relentless media scrutiny during her pregnancy, and George Clooney decided to step in publicly. He drew a direct comparison to Diana and did not hide behind carefully crafted celebrity talking points. He openly argued that the press was repeating the same pattern, pushing a woman toward the same tragic outcome. That was not routine Hollywood support. It was a deliberate statement from someone who understood exactly how powerful those words were. For Harry, it had to mean more than almost any public endorsement ever could. George Clooney had linked Meghan's treatment to the events surrounding his mother's death, and he did it on camera with his own reputation attached. If there was ever a moment proving this friendship was built on more than the prestige of a royal wedding invitation, this was it. And if Palace Insider is bringing you the details other channels miss, make sure to hit that like button because it genuinely helps the channel grow. So what happened next? That is where the story gets murky. Neither George Clooney nor Amal Clooney has publicly addressed the reported distance. Harry and Meghan have not spoken about it either. What changed was not what people saw, but what they stopped seeing. After the Sussexes moved to California in 2020, public signs of the friendship slowly faded away. No appearances together. No photos. No major events. No public interactions that normally signal an active celebrity friendship. The Lake Como chapter and George Clooney's 2019 defense of Meghan became the high point. After that came silence. And as Sussex controversies continued making headlines, that silence only became more noticeable. Reports circulating through royal and entertainment circles suggested Harry tried to reconnect over the years, but communication reportedly became harder to maintain. Messages allegedly went unanswered. Meetings were discussed but never happened. When interactions did occur, they were described as polite yet lacking the warmth of earlier years. Not hostile. Not dramatic. Just distant. And according to multiple accounts, that gradual fade was what made it especially difficult for Harry to understand. A public feud can be confronted. A misunderstanding can be fixed. But when someone simply drifts away without explanation, there is nothing to argue with, and no obvious way to get answers. That is what makes this story different from other celebrity friendships that cooled after the wedding. George Clooney was not just another famous guest. He was the most visible public defender. His support in 2019 set a standard that made his later silence impossible to ignore. When someone publicly compares your wife's treatment to the tragedy that took your mother, and then slowly disappears from your world, that absence carries weight. Let us know what you think in the comments. Did the Clooneys make a deliberate choice, or did the friendship simply run its course? That question becomes even more interesting when we get to the King's Trust Awards in 2023. By then, the Sussex story had already passed through several explosive chapters. The Oprah interview. The Netflix documentary. Harry's memoir Spare. Each one brought new controversy and placed more claims about the royal family into the public record. Spare in particular revealed private conversations, personal grievances, and detailed portrayals of family members that quickly became global talking points. Against that backdrop, George Clooney and Amal Clooney appeared at a major event connected to King Charles's charitable work. Not a Sussex event. Not a project linked to Harry and Meghan. The King's Trust Awards, a high-profile occasion tied directly to the very institution Harry had spent years publicly criticizing. The Clooneys offered no explanation and made no statement. They simply attended, greeted people they knew, and carried on with their evening. Yet for many royal watchers, that simple appearance spoke louder than words ever could. For a couple that regularly moves through international charity, legal, and institutional circles, attending an event like that was hardly shocking. But royal commentators did not need a public statement. The symbolism was obvious, and people noticed. While Harry was publicly describing the royal family as an institution that had deeply hurt him, one of the celebrity couples reportedly closest to him was attending a prestigious event connected to his father, the king. The contrast was difficult to miss. Whether the Clooneys intended any message at all or were simply supporting a cause they valued, the impact on the public narrative was significant. For many observers, it became another sign that some of the Hollywood figures once closely linked to the Sussexes were making different decisions about where their public associations should be. And the Clooney story does not stand alone. Look back at the 2018 wedding guest list. It was packed with major names from entertainment, sports, and media. David Beckham and Victoria Beckham were there. Idris Elba DJ'd the reception. Serena Williams delivered a speech during the celebrations. The sheer number of famous faces created an image of Harry and Meghan at the height of their influence, a couple seemingly connecting royalty and Hollywood in a way that looked unstoppable. 6 years later, the picture looks very different. By 2024 and 2025, David Beckham's name appeared far more often alongside King Charles, Prince William, and Princess Catherine than alongside Harry and Meghan. Reports surrounding the Invictus Games and an apparent cooling between Beckham and Harry circulated widely enough to become part of the broader discussion. Idris Elba continues to be linked publicly to charitable work and royal initiatives associated with the monarchy, while his connection to Harry and Meghan rarely generates headlines anymore. Then there is Serena Williams, once viewed as one of Meghan's closest and most loyal celebrity friends. In recent years, she has become noticeably quieter when it comes to the Sussex story. And finally, there is Oprah Winfrey, arguably the most influential celebrity connection in the entire Sussex orbit. Despite her highly public involvement, she has not selected Meghan's children's book for her book club and has not publicly attached herself to any major Sussex project since. As commentator Paula Froelich described it, Oprah appears close enough to stay aware of developments, but distant enough to avoid being pulled into any ongoing fallout. Taken together, the pattern is not evidence of some grand coordinated move away from the Sussexes. That explanation would be far too simple. Celebrities make decisions for different reasons, and every relationship has its own story. But something else is noticeable. Many of the public connections that once defined the Sussex celebrity network are simply no longer visible. The joint appearances are gone. The public acknowledgments have largely disappeared. The kind of social interaction that normally fuels celebrity friendship headlines is no longer generating attention. For Harry and Meghan, that may be more challenging than an actual public feud. A feud creates headlines, responses, and opportunities to tell your side. A quiet disappearance creates none of those things. It simply leaves behind a guest list from 2018 that looks very different from the social landscape surrounding them today. That reality also raises another question. What was the Clooney friendship actually built on, and was that foundation strong enough to survive everything that followed? Many commentators have pointed out that the 2018 royal wedding was not simply a gathering of close lifelong friends. It was one of the biggest ceremonial events of the decade, the kind of occasion where invitations reflect status, influence, and cultural significance as much as personal history. George Clooney and Amal Clooney were not childhood friends of Harry and Meghan. They had not spent years building a deep personal bond before the wedding. Like many guests, they were part of a remarkable mix of genuine friends, influential figures, and globally recognized names whose presence reflected the scale of the occasion. That is not criticism. It is simply the reality of an event that functioned as both a personal celebration and a global cultural moment. Which is exactly why what happened afterward mattered. The Lake Como invitation and George Clooney's public defense of Meghan in 2019 suggested the relationship had grown into something more meaningful than a prestigious wedding connection. He did not have to speak out. He chose to. And that choice made the friendship appear genuine. But the years that followed tested those relationships in ways few people could have predicted. The Oprah interview. The Netflix documentary. Harry's memoir Spare. These were not minor developments. They were major public events that kept the Sussex story at the center of controversy and global attention. Every new chapter added more claims about members of the royal family to the public record. Every new project kept the Sussex story locked in controversy and forced people around them into a choice: engage publicly or stay noticeably silent. The Clooneys, whose reputation is built on prestige, stability, carefully managed relationships, and a level of global credibility that takes years to earn, chose either side. They did not criticize the Sussexes. They did not defend them. They simply stayed quiet. And in that silence, the friendships slowly disappeared from view. What makes that silence so interesting is George Clooney's own history. This is someone who has repeatedly spoken out when he believed something mattered, whether the issue was Darfur, press freedom, or political corruption. Yet after his very public defense of Meghan in 2019, he remained silent through every major Sussex controversy. The Oprah fallout. The Netflix documentary. Harry's memoir Spare. The legal battles. Through all of it, there was no public intervention. And that silence may have been a message in itself. Because if there is one thing George Clooney's career suggests, it is that he rarely stays quiet about causes or people he feels strongly compelled to defend. Remaining silent about something he has moved on from, however, fits a pattern people have seen before. That is what makes the Clooney story so revealing when viewed through the wider lens of Harry's post-royal life. It raises an uncomfortable possibility. Maybe some of the Hollywood relationships that looked strongest in 2020 depended on circumstances that no longer existed. The circumstances changed, and some of the relationships changed with them. When Harry moved to California, the idea that Hollywood could become a stable alternative to royal life was not an unreasonable assumption. The industry is full of people who understand public scrutiny, navigate powerful institutions, and maintain connections across complicated worlds. On paper, it seemed like an environment where the Sussexes could thrive. But Hollywood operates according to its own rules. Some relationships are built on genuine friendship. Some are built on brand alignment. Most exist somewhere in between. And those calculations can shift over time. The Clooneys are not simply famous celebrities. They have spent years building a carefully managed global profile, maintaining relationships with major institutions and causes that matter deeply to them. That means public associations are rarely accidental. Their appearance at the King's Trust Awards was not necessarily a statement against Harry. There is no evidence it was intended that way. Most likely, it was simply an event they believed was worth supporting. But it highlighted something the move to California may not have fully prepared Harry for. The celebrities he expected to become part of his network already had networks of their own. Those networks did not suddenly reorganize around the Sussex arrival. Hollywood did not move to Montecito. The Sussexes moved to Hollywood. And in Hollywood, the people who shape influence, control access, and define social status are usually the same people who were there long before you arrived and will remain long after. The friendship that began with a wedding invitation in 2018 deepened through a Lake Como visit, and was reinforced by George Clooney's public defense of Meghan was clearly real at the time. The disappearance of that friendship from public view also appears real. By every visible measure, it has not continued into 2025 in any meaningful public way. What happened in between? Only the people involved truly know. Whether it was a gradual drift, changing priorities, or something else entirely remains private. But publicly, the story points toward a broader pattern that has appeared repeatedly throughout the Sussex era. The social and professional network built around Harry and Meghan's post-royal identity has not looked as durable as many expected when it first took shape. One by one, several celebrity relationships that once seemed central to that new chapter have stopped producing visible signs of ongoing closeness. The Clooneys were supposed to be one of the strongest pillars in that structure. George Clooney's defense of Meghan in 2019 looked like the kind of loyalty that would last. The Lake Como invitation looked like the kind of gesture that would cement a lasting friendship. Yet by every public indicator, that connection no longer appears to occupy the same place it once did. So what is the real explanation? Was it a deliberate recalibration by the Clooneys? A natural drift caused by years of controversy? Or simply a friendship that ran its course under extraordinary public pressure? There is no simple answer. And anyone claiming there has probably reached a conclusion before looking at all the evidence. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read them, and the discussion is always worth following. Subscribe to Palace Insider so you never miss our next deep dive. And if you enjoy this kind of analysis, hit the like button because it genuinely helps the channel keep bringing these stories to you. The story keeps evolving. And when the next chapter arrives, we'll be here to cover it.